Hearing me okay? Can you still hear me okay? Great, great, great. Um, I'm Bruce Pardoe. I'm one of the community Dharma leaders that is active with Mountain Stream and gets up and shares a little Dharma from time to time. And I was just on a retreat, very happy to say, with John Travis, our founding teacher. And, something that I think touches a lot of us about John and um, is just that he comes from this very pure place. You can really feel his heart and his freshness, his openness with the Dharma. It's almost as if he's speaking from emptiness itself and allowing the awakened nature of mind to do the talking for him. It's a very sweet uh, energy to be around. And it's really interesting. Over the years, I've had such a this wonderful good fortune of being exposed to some really amazing teachers: Jack Kornfield, Joseph Goldstein, Sharon Salzberg, Tara Brach, you Gil Fronsdal. I could go on and on and on. And yet, I think for me, there's something that I've really needed John and the type of teaching that he offers because for me, I tend to approach things from my head. And I've got to figure it out. I've got to know how all the pieces and parts work together. And there's sort of a deep fascination with that. And John's not that way. He's much more circular. He's much more he's letting the Dharma do the work for him. And so for me, it's been very powerful because it's been a big invitation to drop down from my head into my heart. And I remember on a 2 month retreat, one time John was my interviewing teacher, and he said to me, Bruce, um, we do this practice and we open, and really it's about reclaiming our innocence before we abandoned ourselves and felt that something else needed to be added to experience. And that term, reclaiming innocence, it really touched my heart. This possibility of reclaiming innocence. And I feel like that's such a strong theme and thread for me in my own Dharma practice. And, there's something that I find comforting in the humility of that because I met a great teacher over in India, this lovely, very open hearted, very sincere younger woman. And she said that for her, awakening was never a process of addition, it was always a process of subtraction. And in a way, this practice is so much about opening up to what's already there that through no fault of our own, but just in the way of the working of things, um, we lose touch with our innocence, with our simplicity, and it gets layered over so deeply that we forgot that that's where we started from. So, anyways, I want to explore this theme of reclaiming innocence tonight, and kind of how our practice naturally takes us along a pathway that just this observation, whether we're learning to steady our attention with the breath or really opening up to the potential to um, allow wisdom and insight to develop by just staying with the process of how experience moves through us, and this quality of mind that receives and knows the elements of experience. So, um, in any event, I think one of the things that I find kind of uplifting and just sort of fun is that the quote from Tom Robbins from Still Life with a Woodpecker, where he goes, "It's never too late to have a happy childhood." Since there's some this thing about liberation and freedom. To me, a word that resonates very deeply is just the word play. And I've had the good fortune to be around a lot of fairly awakened people from various traditions, and one of the themes with all of them is this playfulness. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is just ready to laugh, and especially at himself in an instant. There's something just very disarming about this, and uh, how lightly awakening helps us hold, um, what we take to be so gall dang important. So, anyways, I wanted to read. I thought this was very cute. Um, you are 8 years old. It is Sunday evening. You have been granted an extra hour before bed. The family is playing Monopoly. You have been told you are big enough to join them. You lose. You are losing continuously. Your stomach cramps with fear. The money pile in front of you is almost gone. Your brothers are snatching all the houses from your streets. The last street is being sold. You have to give in. You have lost. And suddenly, you know that it is only a game. You jump up with joy and you accidentally knock the lamp over. It falls on the floor and drags the teapot with it. The others are angry, but you laugh when you go upstairs. You know, for you have seen the joy of being nothing and having nothing, and knowing that that gives an immeasurable freedom. So, in a sense, this is what we're doing with our practice of doing nothing. Uh, it's that we're opening up to, oh, wow, wait a second. Is there a fresh way in which a sense of, if I'm sort of like a system operating itself, is there a fresh way in which my system can operate and orient and relate to uh, the phenomena of um, just ongoing, stories, and it's never going to stop. It's never going to end. But can we see through and see the constant flow and change, and then begin to feel into, wait a second, there's all this stuff moving through and shifting and morphing. Sometimes I feel heavy, sometimes I feel light, sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm sad, sometimes there's a lot of thoughts, and sometimes it thins out. Sometimes it's light, sometimes it's dark. All of these things arising and passing and changing and morphing and shifting, and yet there's this quality that's receiving it all, that is knowing it. Our attention focuses that quality of awareness or knowing. It can focus in on the tip of my finger, or it can focus in on the whole room, or with a sense of the solar system, the galaxy, the universe. There's no limit to it. And it's all alive with this quality of receiving, like the sky receives the clouds, um, but isn't stained or harmed by them. So, um, you know, we can have a cute little example like that of, the Monopoly boy, or, sometimes we see that wisdom comes when we see with a vast perspective. Our life is unfolding in the timeless galaxies. We turn with the stars in cycles of light and dark, birth and death, joy and sorrow. Perceive that you are not yet begotten, that you are in the womb, that you are young, that you are old, that you have died, that you are in the world beyond the grave. Grasp in your mind all this at once, all times and places, all substances and qualities and magnitudes together. Then you can begin to see with the eye of the divine. How about that? I mean, I think that what practice is inviting us to do is, oh, if I can just stay here and sit and be with what I take to be myself and my experience, um, what opens up if I sort of consistently um, apply myself? And just, with, again, with this humility, with this curiosity, not that I'm going to become the greatest meditator of all time, or, that I have some kind of agenda. Other than sincerity, no agenda other than sincerity. Probably we all come in with some degree of agenda of, I want to be able to relax more, or I don't want to suffer as much. These are important and valid. Um, and I think there's something about we're in a sense, we're showing up for all of ourselves. Um, the action of love is to include. People ask me, what is love? I think it is inclusion. I feel it as inclusion. The action of fear is to exclude, to kind of keep away. Our practice is an ongoing invitation to include whatever's happening, you know, um, as we sit, as we turn the attention inwards, as we practice stillness. I mean, at the end of the day, this is really all about opening up and allowing the fresh to emerge. I love the quote from Jim Henson, who is the Muppets and the puppeteer. He said, "The most sophisticated people I know, inside they are all children." So I'm going to open up. I've got a little more to say here, but I want to open up if people are willing to share a little bit, and I'm going to offer the question: what is innocence? If we're reclaiming innocence, what is it that we are reclaiming? Is anybody willing to chime in on that?
Well, Bruce, this is Philip. The first thing that comes to my mind is the ability to laugh at oneself. and not take oneself too seriously. It's like, in spite of everything that's going on around us, that we hear daily, who knows what our cosmic purpose is? And if we can just find humor and laugh at ourselves, I think that's one of the most enduring qualities of innocence that we can possess.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Yeah, holding it lightly, not being in control. Yeah, Jen.
Bruce, I wanted to share that during a recurring Tuesday evening sitting and Sangha group, we share in council style. And so there are really direct invitations to speak from the heart when and if you feel like it, and then to listen from the heart when everyone else is having their opportunity to speak. And that, to me, I think the feeling of innocence is really present there because there's sort of an unguardedness, or I'm not exactly sure how to say it, but it feels really clean. And there's been this, because of the agreements of the group, there's been this particular container that's created. So there's a feeling of safety and there's a feeling of mutual respect. So somehow there's an innocence that's like called in and supported within that.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I am so happy that's happening. That's gorgeous, and I really love that word. Also, it sounds like there's also a lot of sincerity, but that unguardedness. That ability not to thin out some of that separation. And just to be natural.
Yeah, thank you, to thin out some of that separation. I like that.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, that's such a powerful aspect of community. We need the awakened nature, Buddha. We need the teachings to help us point in a helpful direction. And we need each other to do this really radical thing of not focusing the attention outwards, but turning it inwards. And, there's a lot under the hood for all of us. So we hold each other through the stormy seas of ourselves sometimes. Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, Bruce. It's Marie.
Hey, Marie.
How are you? How's New England?
Oh, it's just gorgeous. Absolutely fantastic. And great to be back here at my farm.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
When I'm laying here thinking of innocence. When do I feel innocence? And first word that comes up is curious. Present and curious, without presence of fear or contracted, just an expansive delight, is the feeling or the feelings I associate with innocence. And to me, it's a reconnection with the child in me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Enjoy the colors.
Thank you, Marie. And thanks for that share. Yeah, this sense of, I definitely, there's the innocence of childhood and the openness. I love this thing about interest too. I mean, it seems like there was a fellow I met in India, and he was just absolutely awestruck, absolutely in awe. And I feel like that, that place of wonder and awe. Um, I feel like I've sensed that a lot in people who have really, reclaimed some of their innocence. So yes, interest in. For me, another big word that for me comes up is the word freshness. You know, I realize how deeply conditioned I am to habitually relate to life from, me at the center and the rest of life and the universe out there. And that centrality is it's really interesting to watch it. I can't force that to thin out. I can just be, kind of curious and um, acknowledge it at some level. But what I feel like I've noticed in practice is that has, that's on a continuing uh, process of thinning out, of loosening up, because it's a prison, and the more that it loosens up, it's like ooh wee. But there's a lot of reflexive holding that, yeah, and just and I think one of the key things is that for those aspects of myself, if I'm at war with those aspects of myself, I just create more of them. So learning to bring kindness and patience and um, like it's like how you would hold an upset child, in a way, because at some level that's what it is. So before I move on, is there anybody else that would like to share anything? As Marie did, you don't have to turn on your video, and you don't have to share. All right, I think I'll move along. So thank you for sharing about innocence. And for me, one of the things that I just find this so fascinating. I like to think about what my life was like before I had words. Before I had individuated and separated out. I remember very strongly. I went to a new school when I was 9 years old and entering the fourth grade, and there was a big arts and crafts, or at a really big area where down in this big cavernous basement, um, where we did all kinds of art projects and had art class. This wonderful teacher, Tom Souls, and he had a wall of these different glazes and glaze colors that we would use on ceramics. And so I was down there in the basement and I was looking up. I mean, literally, there must have been probably, I'm guessing, well, I was a 9 year old, so maybe it wouldn't seem so big now. But I think there was probably at least 300 different colors down there. And so I was reading the names of the colors. And as I named each of the colors, what I was noticing at some, I'm not sure how well I can explain it, but at some level I was forgetting what the color, that when I named them, I forgot what the colors were. And there was a little sense of, I couldn't stop doing it, and there was a little sense of sadness of that applying the name was distancing me from possibly something more alive about those colors that I already knew. And with the naming, I was forgetting them. It really touched me That stayed with me all my life. I still don't really actually know what it totally means, but yes, I'm fascinated about um, how life was before the words and before when we come onto the scene. We come onto the scene and there's no sense of separation. There's just experience happening and being known. Experiences of they've proven that very young infants do not see the breast as other than themselves if they have the good fortune to be nurse fed. Um, and so you've got this little being that comes into the world and it's just open, it's experiencing. There's no here's me and here and that out there, no self and other. It's just a field of knowing. Now, it's not a differentiated field of knowing. When the infant comes out, you know, there the sounds are uh, sort of uncoordinated. You can't make out a sense of distance, and really we need that. So when we're walking, out onto the street, if we don't hear the car horn or the bus coming, and have a sense of how far away it might be, we might get run over. Um, so that's something we really need. When a young infant comes out, I know that they have the black and white toys for them, and they don't really have a sense of depth perspective. Um, and very helpful to have that, of course, and making sense out of the world. At some level, we need to develop a sense of self to be able to function in this 3D sort of material conditional plane that we have to survive in. And so we need to be able to navigate the world. But what happens is that we, what happens is that something scary or painful enough happens that we get shocked, we get frightened, and that there's contraction from that. And most of a lot of the time, there'll be contraction from that, and then we'll open up, back into, hey, here's the world, and I'm connected to it. But at some point, we get shocked enough that contraction doesn't let go, and that's the birth of fear. And even though it might somewhat let go, there's something that's laid down that doesn't completely go away. And so we begin to separate out, thinking that we need it, that protection is needed. And so we protect ourselves by trying to get more of what we like and trying to keep away what we don't like. So part of reclaiming innocence isn't necessarily that I would need to go back to experiencing the world in the way that an infant does, but to recognize that something's been laid down. This sense of separation that's not actually, that's an addition. Remember, I was talking about addition and subtraction. That's an addition, and it's the most fundamental subtraction. As I mentioned, it's an ongoing subtraction about which I'm in awe. And of course, which I support, but which is organic in nature. It cannot be forced. There simply can be curiosity, sincerity, and a willingness to make space for the process to unfold. You know, this other thing for those of you who have connected in with me teaching, another big thing that I found so helpful in my own practice and really helpful for people as they navigate challenging emotions is allowing the attention to connect with this field of space. You know, space is another element in our bodies, just like weight and temperature and movement, wetness in our, you know, that happens in our mouths or behind our eyelids. We also experience ourselves physically. You know, we can sense that, I have a sense of where I am in space. I can sense that my chin is, you know, a certain distance away from my pelvis. We're constantly in relationship to this physical element of space. And, you know, I can, in a sense, feel out around my body or sense out around my body. And if I sense into my body and I can, you know, it's easy enough to distinguish between a feeling of weight or a feeling of temperature, like, oh, warmth. Warmth and weight feel differently. I can differentiate and acknowledge those. Space is interesting because space is literally just the volume, the openness and stillness in which these things are happening. So I've just found that this exploration of space, you know, it's kind of, I've got a natural relationship with that at the relative level, at my average, everyday, normal operating, functioning level. I'm connected with space. You know, I'm walking through doors, not into walls, as best I can. And so, you know, this when I sense space in my body, I can be like, oh wait, that if I can be clear about the other sensations, but I can also feel the space in which they're happening, that open stillness within me is not different from the open stillness around me. And if my attention is including in and out the space in and around me, it's including everything. And now it's all just, it's a multiplicity of things happening within a unity. I found that to be, for myself, it's just so immensely supportive. It lends a sense of ventilation and fluidity and non-stuckness. You know, I can try and harm the space all I want. I'm never going to stain or bruise or damage it. It's like the sky and clouds model. So it's kind of a relative doorway into the absolute. It's just been, oh wow, and it opens up a fresh perspective, a fresh relationship to what's actually happening. And because the space is ultimately at rest, it's still. Everything else is moving, but the space itself is not itself moving. So it, you know, these qualities, it's limitless, it's ever present. You know, there's a lot of unconditional qualities to a relative aspect of our lives. And I find that is immensely, I'm a person who probably fits into the category of trauma sensitive meditators. I've had a lot of trauma and panic attacks come up on retreats, especially years ago. And being able to connect with something that complete, whole, has been a wonderful, wonderful boon for my practice. So I think another area that our practice opens us up to is the aspect of, as we sit in practice, and especially if you have the good fortune to be able to go on retreat, and if that's a comfortable you know prospect for you, physically, financially, work wise, temperament wise. Um, when we have the opportunity to really be in a container that allows us to all day long really focus the attention inwards, whether we're up and doing a yogi job or eating or walking or sitting in stiller meditation or lying down meditation. The mind, the attention can just get very, very collected, um, and very, very present, and stay rather stably with the unfolding of experience. And what happens is, in our regular, everyday, normal lives, there's a lot of distractions, there's a lot of things coming at us all the time. And Joseph Goldstein calls it our NPMs, our noticings per minute. So as we come into retreat or into meditation, we maybe have NPMs that are like dum 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 dum, a thought, sensation, an emotion, a sound, an image, a dun dun dun, and we're sort of like a metronome. Our noticings per minutes are going along, but as we cultivate more, those noticings per minute, they begin to get. It's not that things in and of themselves have slowed down so much, but in the way that with slow motion photography, the reason why it becomes slow motion is because you have more frames per second. So you're having more noticings per minute. And, as retreat goes along, you just start to, it goes from dun, dun, dun to da, 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 da. And then there can be times where things become really, really, really deeply collected. The attention is very stable. And it's just kind of like, and then you're seeing so many noticings per minute or frames per second that you can see a sound emerge almost like it's coming through thick syrup. You can see that sound emerge and move through. You can see that image arise and pass through. You can almost see a pre-thought. It's like, and the content of the thought without it turning into a verbalization. And there can just be this appreciation and enjoyment of the stillness that's so thorough that it's almost like, there's no necessity for that thought. It can just sort of dissipate before actually turning into a full verbal thought. It's really fascinating. I mean, our minds, our capacities of attention are kind of astonishing. So anyways, this is, where we see so clearly, we can see momentary change. We can see how things, it's so clear, it's so obvious, the sense of, open awareness in which it's happening, and the sense of just, it's just this object and then the next object and the next, and there's not really anyone home behind the curtain. It's just presence an experience happening and being known at a very kind of crystalline clear level. So having these types of insights and experiences arise as part of practice really brings about it's a slow loosening, a freshness of the frame of relationship, the frame of mind to our experience. And I love the little Zen story. The guy says, I see the bamboo patch by the monastery 200 times a day, and it is never the same. They talk about, I think, in the Zen tradition, this, reclaiming innocence, stepping outside of your normal frame of reference. It's really reflected in their koans, the idea of the original face. What's the sound of one hand clapping? I'll read a little something from Alan Watson. The art of living is neither careless drifting on the one hand, nor fearful clinging to the past on the other. It consists in being sensitive to each moment, in regarding it as utterly new and unique, in having the mind open and highly receptive. Pablo Picasso said, it takes a very long time to become young. And it can, and I'm glad we're on a path together that's leading us in that direction. Okay, so I think I will end there, and we'll just have a couple of minutes of metta. I invite you to close your eyes and get comfortable and feel in, with a sense of freshness and wonder towards yourself. And towards this capacity to be present. Feel into your heart. Hello, heart. The mystery of the good, inclusive heart. Notice if you can include yourself in a field of kindness. What does kindness feel like? What is its texture? Does it have an expansiveness, a radiance to it? How do you know you have a heart? Can you receive yourself just as you are right now? With a wish for your happiness, with a wish for your safety, for your peace of mind and the ease of well-being. And if you can feel into that for yourself, beautiful. If you can't right now, that also is welcome here. And just this patient, receptive, welcoming attention. And if we can include ourselves a little bit, or even include not including, can we then include and acknowledge each other? This supportive Sangha. Can we acknowledge and include a world that so dearly needs to feel the energy of our loving kindness, of its loving kindness, of its friendliness, of its basic goodness. When we're not scared or confused, we are loving creatures. And there's a lot of fear and confusion right now. Can we include that? And just with the simple wish that all beings everywhere might be truly, truly happy.